Hello, Collateral Gaming listeners. Chazzle Dazzle here from the Trial by Error Variety Show podcast. I just wanted to take a few seconds to invite you guys over to what we do. No, it's not video games, but we do invite really awesome and unique bands from all over the world. We dig deep into their souls and find really cool stories to tell you, and there's tons of music every week, so subscribe to us wherever you subscribe to your podcast. We look forward to having you.
I'm Ashley Chancellor.
And I'm Zachary Gio.
This is Collateral Gaming. Welcome to Collateral Gaming, the only video game podcast that matters, where we focus on good games, bad games, and everything else in between in the world of gaming. We are podcasting straight from somewhere in South Texas and in Georgia. I'm not sure. We're going to have to really retool that, considering that two-thirds of us are in Georgia now. But and yes, my friends, we are a 420 friendly podcast, so whatever you have, smoke it if you've got it.
Woo woo. Man, it's good to be back. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, yeah, we actually were talking about this right before the episode, but it's actually been a minute before Zach has been on an episode, and time just flew by, and I don't think you've been on since Mario and Luigi, and that was back in February.
Yeah, it's been a minute. I want to apologize to everybody. I've missed you guys, but I got a new job working with Aflac Insurance Company, and I've been a licensed insurance agent for like 4 or 5 months now, and I got engaged. So a lot of things have been happening, but yeah, my girlfriend and I, Danielle, got engaged to be married. We're getting married next year, sometime in November, and I'm really excited. I love her to death, and I'm actually getting ready to move next Tuesday. It's Wednesday now when we're recording this, so a week from yesterday, at the time of recording this, I'm moving, and I'm going to be closer to her. I'm going to be able to do a lot more with Aflac. I'm going to have better internet, so I'll be able to record podcasts better. But it's really good to be back, and especially for a little spicy episode that we got today, because today we're talking about one of my favorite games ever growing up.
Yes, sir. But before we get into that, let's catch up a little bit. What's been going on in the world of gaming? I mean, I think since the last time we recorded, there was a Nintendo Direct, which was honestly disappointing, and there was really nothing of mention.
Are you surprised? I'm honestly not surprised with how little we've learned about our favorite franchises and stuff recently. I've just, you would think we would have learned something about Breath of the Wild 2 at this point, considering like we're closing in on when they had originally projected to release it. First it was 2022, and then a Direct told us that it was going to be delayed to 2023, and now we don't know anything. I didn't even watch the most recent Direct, dude. I knew it was going to be crap.
I didn't watch it, but I caught up on the news. I mean, they announced a Monster Hunter game.
Of course they did.
Played any of those games. I would be interested in getting into the franchise, but I haven't gotten into it yet. Mario plus Rabbids got some more information, which I'm kind of interested in that one. It's a Mario tactical RPG, and it's actually kind of fun. Not unlike the game we're talking about today.
Yep.
Persona also, I think like their 3 different Persona games are coming to the Switch now.
That's nice. I mean, the Switch needs a little bit more diversity as far as games and stuff, but they are adding more stuff to the Virtual Console, which is nice. The Nintendo 64 service that they have on there, I actually signed up for that sometime last year, and I haven't touched it since, but I popped on there the other day, and I noticed that they had added, like, Mario Golf, they had added, like, Mario Party, and I was really happy. I was like, you know what, this is stuff I'm going to have to visit. But as far as the Direct is concerned, Monster Hunter is becoming a little bit like Call of Duty, in the fact that they're releasing it like maybe once a year, and it's starting to bug me a little bit. I played Monster Hunter World, but that's it.
Yeah, I mean, nothing good ever comes out of releasing games on an annual basis. I mean, look what happened with Assassin's Creed, and then it started getting good again whenever they started taking their time again.
Yeah.
So, Nier Automata is coming to Switch, I think, or a version of it, or a variant. I'm not sure. We're getting Return to Monkey Island. The Monkey Island has franchise has always interested me. It's something I would like to check out. Sonic Frontiers, some news about that.
Oh, yes, we did, but that game kind of leaves a little bit of a gap in my heart. I don't know if it's going to be good. I don't know if it's going to be bad. I hope it's going to be good, but I'm expecting it to be bad. I don't know what's going to happen, to be honest. I hope that Frontiers is so good.
You know, they're actually trying not to call it open world, I think, but it's definitely got that vibe. They're going for a more open game format, and I'm all for it. I'd love to see Sonic get modernized like that. We definitely need more of that. Although sometimes I wonder how the Sonic franchise is still going.
I mean, you're right. Honestly, my last good game for the Sonic series was honestly Sonic Adventure 2. And that was 2004? It was a long time ago. But hey, I mean, Little Blue Hedgehog, I feel like the Hedgehog has been more successful in TV and movies than it has been in games. Like Sonic and the Secret Rings, I sort of liked it. It was okay, but a lot of people didn't because of the whole, I guess the final boss kind of ruins the game for everything. But, it's fine.
You know what we are getting on Switch? Pac-Man World. And I actually like the Pac-Man World series. I had the Pac-Man World 2 on GameCube, and it was pretty fun. And Pac-Man World 3 is a very good game. I would love to talk about it on the podcast.
I'm down because Pac-Man World 2 and 3 are games that I really enjoy very much.
Yeah, I loved how they took Pac-Man and made it into like an action-adventure game. I really like that. I'm glad that we're getting, the first game on Switch. I think that's the only one I haven't played. So that'll be interesting. Sony announced The Last of Us Part 1, a remake of The Last of Us.
A remake of the remaster.
Yeah, so while I'm happy to see more Last of Us stuff, don't get me wrong, and it does look great, did we really need it? Because
nope.
Like a lot of people have pointed out, The Last of Us was already remastered for PS4, and it looks great there. I mean, if they were to just kind of update it a little bit for the PS5 port, it would be fine, like increase the frame rate or something. But they're doing a full-on remake, which ambitious. I'm happy that Naughty Dog is putting that much love into something, but I don't know, kind of feels like we should have gotten like Jak and Daxter. That's right. A franchise that hasn't been touched in a very long time by Naughty Dog. I mean, we finally got Crash Bandicoot back, and I don't even think Naughty Dog was really involved in that very much. But
well, no, to me, I think this Last of Us remake is a cash grab because, I mean, how much more beautiful can you make the first game? I mean, unless they remake it from the ground up, everything is new, which I don't think it's going to be. I think it's just going to be really pretty.
Apparently that is what they're doing. They are building the game from the ground up, but it's going to follow the same story. I mean, that thing, it's not like a full-on reboot or anything. It's the same game, but they're rebuilding it from the ground up as the exact same game. Does that make sense?
I mean, it does, but I don't like it. Give us The Last of Us Part 3.
Well, I think
this is Part 3.
Maybe supposed to hold us over until Part 3, and that's the idea. Because
yeah,
remember how big of
a
gap there was between, Part 1 and Part 2, so...
Yeah, you're right, and it was a very long time. One that I'm not willing to do again, let's be honest.
Yeah, no kidding.
I'll be playing Modern Warfare 7 by the time that comes out.
Were there any events for Sony or Xbox? I feel like one of the two had something, but I didn't really check it out.
I didn't check anything out if there were, let's be honest.
A Sony 2022, because I know we didn't get E3 this year, and that was really disappointing. And it was so weird for us not to get E3 this year because, it's 2022. It's been 2 years since the pandemic, and we had E3 last year. So
yes, we did.
What's the deal?
I don't know. Either companies are literally losing their minds, or we are right around the corner from getting some really nasty information, and I am here for that. Let's be real. If Nintendo kind of just comes out, because you guys know me, and Ash, you know me, I'm a Nintendo freak. I love Call of Duty and I love action adventure games. I'm actually replaying through Fallen Order right now, but
fuck yes.
I'm willing to bet that Nintendo is just waiting to roll out news about Prime 4 or news about Breath of the Wild 2 or the sequel to Breath of the Wild, excuse me, because it's not going to be called Breath of the Wild. It's probably going to be like Champions of the Wild or something like that. I don't know. This game is mild. I don't know, but it's gonna be something that's gonna be worth the wait eventually. Because I mean, come on, let's face it, 6 years at this point. That's the longest we've waited for a Zelda game. Twilight Princess came out.
Are they still officially going with the story of it coming out in 2022, or did they?
Oh no, they delayed it to like 2023, and I'm willing to bet they're gonna drop it in March of 2023 because that's when they did it in 2017, and that will be exactly 6 years.
Yeah, and they won't. Like, there's no chance in hell that it's gonna come out in 2022. I already knew that, but
yeah,
I was just wondering if they had officially delayed it yet because But without a release date, basically, if it doesn't have a release date, it's probably not coming out this year. And that applies to anything.
I thought they officially delayed it to 2023 when they announced Metroid Dread.
No, actually, when they announced Metroid Dread was whenever they said it was going to come out in 2022. That was the thing. That's
Nintendo needs to get their shit together.
Yeah, and that's why people were excited. They said that they were aiming for a 2022 release date. And I kind of called their bluff, I think, at the time. Like, I was like, are they really going to be able to do that? But I'm thinking, well, if they're just going to reuse a bunch of assets from Breath of the Wild, which they should, it shouldn't take that long. But I'm not going to complain that they're taking longer on it. All that means is that Nintendo is doing a better job. I mean, same thing with Prime 4. They scrapped development and had to start all over. But you know what? I'm happy because that game was going to be trash if it was released that way. If Nintendo had to step in and say, nah, let's put Retro Studios back on the job, then, I put my faith in that. And so I'm putting my faith that the sequel to Breath of the Wild will be a fantastic game.
Yep, absolutely.
And it will be worth the wait because Breath of the Wild sure was.
I mean, the only issue I had with Breath of the Wild was the story and the way they did it. Everything else about it was perfect. Just the open world, the side quests, the Great Plateau itself, the Champion's Ballad, the characters that you get into. Okay, we're not talking about Breath of the Wild here. It was fantastic, and I think the sequel is going to be awesome. I'm glad that they're rebuilding Metroid Prime 4 from the ground up. I'm glad that they took the time to tell us that because that makes the wait more bearable. Anything else you want to hit, Ash, before we dive straight in?
No, and I was about to say the same thing. I think, can't really think of any other noteworthy gaming news off the top of my head now anyway, so.
The new Call of Duty this year is Modern Warfare 2.
Yeah, I think we did announce that before at some point, but yeah, if you missed that, there's a new Modern Warfare 2, not to be confused with Modern Warfare 2.
Not to be confused with another game called Modern Warfare 2. But then again, they've literally released 3 games called Modern Warfare. Call of Duty 4, Modern Warfare. Call of Duty, Modern Warfare Remastered. Call of Duty, Modern Warfare 2019. They need to stop.
Well, and this one should not have been called Modern Warfare 2 because I get what they're doing. It's a sequel to the reboot, to the remake of Call of Duty Modern Warfare, which is a completely different game.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So it would have made more sense to... Okay, we're getting off topic here, but...
Yeah, we're here to talk about something else, brother.
Yes! I'm really excited about this, actually, because you introduced me to the series, and I have fallen in love with this series a result of us doing this episode on the podcast.
Well, brother, take it away.
Well, we're talking about Fire Emblem. That is the 2003 game that was originally known as just Fire Emblem in the United States, now is known as Fire Emblem The Blazing Blade, and which was the Japanese subtitle. So it was the very first Fire Emblem game released in the United States, or internationally. The other games, I guess Japan didn't think that we would be interested in, but when Advance Wars was doing well here, and the characters Marth and Roy were very popular in Super Smash Bros. Melee, Nintendo decided to go ahead and make their new GBA Fire Emblem game localized in here in the West, and they actually designed the game with that in mind. That's why this game is actually a perfect entry point, in my opinion, to the Fire Emblem franchise.
You're absolutely correct. And I like how they did it, because Fire Emblem 6 being only released in Japan, which is the Sealed Sword, where Roy is actually the star of that game. The main character. This isn't a movie, what am I talking about? The main character of that game, the Blazing Blade, actually takes you to before Roy's time. One of the main characters is his father, Eliwood. And
Yes.
He's one of the main lords that you have to protect and advance through the story in the game. And honestly, the Blazing Blade is my favorite Fire Emblem game of all time. I've played through the Sealed Sword a couple of times. I just don't like it. I don't think the ending is great. I don't like the fact that you have to unlock all of the side chapters in order to experience the full story. Never enjoyed that, because if you have to sweat your life away to experience everything in a game, I guess it's worth it, but I want the story. The first time I play through the game, I want to experience the entire story. And then, if I want to sweat through it and go all the way through. But I'm getting off topic. The Blazing Blade is one of my favorite Fire Emblem games ever. I love Lyn as a character in Fire Emblem. She's one of my favorite characters in the game. And
Yeah, I think she was the only one to actually make it into Warriors from this entry.
Yep, absolutely. Hector's also cool, but he's a dick.
Hector is probably the best lord, though, in my opinion. I mean, he's just such a powerhouse. What's funny is he seems to be a little bit behind Lyn and Eliwood whenever he's first introduced, in that he isn't doesn't have nearly as high of a speed stat, so he doesn't double attacks and he doesn't evade nearly as well.
Yep.
But he becomes a powerhouse. And let me tell you, the first time I played through, I promoted Lyn first. The second time, I promoted Hector first, because I was just excited to get to play as him. But yeah, no, Fire Emblem: The Blazing Blade actually has 3 main lord characters, 2 of which were actually in the prequel or predecessor. Actually, it's not a prequel; it takes place afterwards.
Technically, it's a sequel that takes place before.
So, the Binding Blade, or the Sealed Sword, depending on the translation. I've started that one. It's very similar to Blazing Blade, but even
hard.
the sprites are the same. But it is much harder, and the game does not really give you any sort of tutorial like this one does. What's nice about this game, and why it works so well, because it was designed this way with Americans in mind, was that the first 10 chapters of the game, Lyn's story, all serve as a tutorial segment.
Yep, it's basically Nintendo's way of saying that Americans are stupid.
Well, it's introducing you to Fire Emblem, because we didn't get any other games. But yeah, no, you're right. They're totally condescending. It's why Super Mario Brothers 2 happened the way that it happened here, for the exact same thing. They thought that the original version of that was too hard, and Nintendo thought that either Fire Emblem was too hard, or that we just wouldn't be interested in the tactical RPG style of gameplay. And I will say, some of the older games are harder to play, because they don't have as many of the improvements that some of the other games, and including the GBA games, have. And even going forward past the GBA games, there are some gameplay facets that are brought in that make the experience more accessible without taking away from the difficulty. But there is something very charming about the original GBA Fire Emblem games. That same sort of charm, I think, that we talked about in our last episode together, which was another GBA RPG, Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga, because there is a sort of difficulty to this game, and if I hadn't taken advantage, if I wasn't playing this on the Wii U Virtual Console or on an emulator, I would have a very difficult time, because, golly. For those of you who aren't familiar with Fire Emblem, it is a tactical or strategy type RPG. You move your units around the map and it's on a grid. And when you move enemies, adjacent to or within a certain range of a character, they perform their attack. So characters that have melee weapons are obviously going to be able to fight units right next to them, whereas archers are going to be able to have a range of 2 squares or more. Magic kind of uses both. And so there's this element of moving in your characters towards enemies that they're going to be strong against and away from enemies that they're going to be weak against.
Yeah, it's really cool how they implement like the different styles of fighting, and well, I'm sure we'll get into the weapon triangles, but the weapon triangles of it and how they work between or differentiating between actual melee and combat weapons and magic. I love it so much.
Uh-huh.
I love it so much because you have swords, axes, and lances. Also, you have bows for archers. And then for magic wielders, you have dark magic, which is stuff that shamans, druids, and pupils can use if you've played the Sacred Stones. Because the pupil, I'm pretty sure the pupil is only in the Sacred Stones. And then you have light magic, which bishops and... what? Okay, so what...
Monks.
Monks, there you go. Monks, there you go.
Monks promote into bishops. Also, priests and clerics too. Also, which is interesting. So, units that use staves actually end up promoting into light magic users. And then, of course, you have your anima magic, your typical elemental style magic. Fire and lightning.
Where you can whip out that My Hero Academia. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, no, I actually really enjoy the weapon triangle as well. I think it might be one of my favorite things about Fire Emblem. And the only thing I think I don't like about Three Houses is that, or Echoes, Shadows of Valentia, is that those games don't have weapon triangles. They're still great games in my opinion. I like the weapon triangle. I like that every unit has specific units that it's strong or weak against, regardless of what type it is, and outside of the weapon triangles, bows are strong against flyers, and unless you equip a Delphi shield.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And and if you want to strategically fight against archers, you just need to move in close because they can't attack one space away. So it's all about strategy, and that's very important in Fire Emblem because of permadeath. Permadeath is one of the biggest, most crucial, pivotal things about Fire Emblem. It's been there since the very first game. Some of the more modern games have introduced a classic or a casual mode that takes away permadeath, but I think that's cheap and I think that that's stupid. And if you're not playing it in classic mode, then you're a fucking noob, because Fire Emblem is all about the risk of losing your units. And yes, I don't like to lose units either. I'll restart the whole fucking map. That's the point. You're supposed to do that.
You don't want to lose anybody, because if you lose somebody and then you beat the game when it's telling you, well, actually, you haven't beaten the game yet, have you?
So, okay, I am on the final chapter of Eliwood's chapter. I was getting ready to beat it right before we did the episode, and I was like, fuck yeah. And then for part 2, I'll make sure I'll get through like Hector's Tale or whatever. And then I ran into a problem. I defeated all the little sub-bosses in that chapter, and then I get to the part where you go after Nurgle, and there's this fucking druid with Berserk. And my dumbass didn't bring a restore staff in this fight. And so I was fucked. And I had a save state. Right whenever I beat all the sub-bosses. I was like, fuck yeah, this was very difficult. These enemies are very high level. It took a lot of work strategically placing my units and not losing anybody. And then after all of that, I'm stuck in this state where I can't avoid one of my units getting berserked. And maybe the RNG works in such a way that it's decided beforehand. And because I looked at the hit and the hit wasn't even that high, but every single time I reloaded it, my Pegasus unit, Floria, got hit with Berserk.
Well, I think that specific RNG moment is set with that save state. So I don't think no matter how many times you reset that save state, you're gonna have to restart if you don't want Floria to go. Is it Floria or Florina?
Floria was the one that ended up being promoted. I would have liked to have promoted Florina because I already had a support with Floria and with Lynn, but Floria just ended up being a stronger unit for me, so she ended up being the one that got the promotion and got the level up. So
You're right, she does. I think I'm more nostalgic with characters. I think I like to promote characters that are with you from the very beginning, which is like why I will always promote, is it Walt or Will, the archer?
Will?
Will. Walt is in Sacred Stones.
My thought was to promote Will as well, but after looking online, I found out that he's like the worst archer unit.
You're out of your mind, man. He's god tier. That's why you got to give him speed wings and secret books. You got to give him stuff.
Well, you're the expert here. You've played this game more times than I have, but
Oh my
I ended
God.
up investing in Rebecca. You would think Wrath would be the one to use because he's on horseback, but apparently he's a trash unit.
What?
Or so I've been told. His promotion at least gives you a melee weapon, which is nice, and he actually has an Orion's Bolt in his inventory in case I ever decided to use him and level him up enough to promote him. There's only so many chapters in the game, and so when I'm going after characters to promote, I'm going to go after the ones that are closer to getting that promotion.
You just got to abuse the
yeah.
hell out of these arenas, man. The arenas are a godsend unless you're like trying to get through the chapters in a reasonable amount of time. Use the arenas, man, or get through the chapters. Yeah, use the arenas.
Problem with the arenas, man. They only appear in like 3 or 4 chapters throughout the entire game, and the first one is in the pirate side mission, which you're supposed to get as quickly to Fargus as quickly as you can, and they end up deploying a bunch of units around the arena. So I was like, nope, fuck that. I'll get the next one.
Bro, that's where I did most of my ranking up.
Really?
Like I forget the pirate that's like down south next to the arena. I forget the name of him.
Dart.
Dart. There you go. Yeah.
He's the one that joins you. Yeah.
He's the what?
He's the one that joins your party.
Oh yeah, you're right. Have you ever just said fuck it and fought Fargus? Just killed him?
No, but I always wanted to.
I did it, and like they give you some really intense boss music, and he's like, I don't know why you're doing this. I'm the only way you can get to the Dread Isle, and then you just annihilate him, and he's like, well, game over. And the game ends. You get a game over, and you have to do the whole chapter over again.
That's funny.
But that arena, like, that chapter is really good for leveling up units. You put your strongest units up front, and I was prone to using sword wielders, especially my Myrmidons, because there's a lot of axe wielders, because, come on, pirates, they use axes. And
right.
so I put my my sword wielders and axe wielders up front, fought my way through, used the arena until I was really tired. There was one point, Ash, where I had like 600,000 gold just from arena spamming.
Yeah, I got a lot of gold. My first time I started playing through this game, actually, I have a story here. So the first time I started playing through this game, it was the first Fire Emblem game I played. And so I wasn't really used to the system. I didn't really know what to do. And I felt like I just mismanaged my units and my inventory entirely. I got to the guided chapter 26X, which is where you fight Sonia after you recruit Nino, and it's the first chapter where you can play as Jafar as well. And I got stuck on that chapter. I had a lot of difficulty because the game, I think that chapter specifically requires you to have some strong flying units, and I didn't. Both of my Pegasus units were completely under-leveled, were not promoted, and so I had a very difficult time. And I'd already used up most of my like the Manicotti and the Wolf Bale had already been used up. So,
shame on you.
Yeah, well, I didn't realize that, there was a better way to go about it. And it's like, don't use your most powerful weapons. Carry an extra, steel sword on your lord at all times so that they can just use that to dispatch enemies that don't require the higher level weapons.
Also, if you can find one, keep a hammer and staff on you. Because you have 3 uses. Have you used a hammer and staff?
Yeah, the one that repairs other weapons. I got that in my first playthrough, but I didn't find it in the second one for some reason.
Yeah, you can use it on your sacred weapons. I always save it for the Manicotti, because until you get the Soul Cotti I think the Soul Cotti is at the end of the chapter, though.
It's at the very end. It's the very last chapter.
That. I hate it so much.
Yeah, because you get this legendary weapon as Lyn, and it's the Manicotti, and it's super fucking cool, and it's a personal weapon that only she can use. It's like her master sword. And just to find out that, like any other weapon, it can break, and then you can't use it the rest of the game. It's like, come on.
I mean, to be honest, well, I like that you can't sell those weapons, because I have accidentally sold weapons that I've wanted to keep before. Like, I think my favorite weapon in the game, it's not a sacred weapon, but it's a killing edge. I'm sure you've ran into plenty of those.
Oh, yeah.
I love those weapons, and they break so easily. They only have 20 uses. It sucks.
Yeah, same thing with silver weapons. And what's nice with silver weapons is that they actually, despite dealing more damage, they're lighter than other weapons. So they're actually ideal, but their durability use is really low. And killing edges too. And there are some characters that are designed to use killing edges or killing axes. The assassin class, Jafar, or if you end up promoting Matthew or Legault, that their default weapon, the weapon that they're supposed to use that works with their high crit stats, are killing edges. Same thing with your berserker, whatever the fuck his name is, Hawkeye.
Yep,
With the
love
killing
me
axe.
some Hawkeye.
Love him.
He seems like kind of a derpy character, but he's
actually, Jesus. He could walk on water.
He is Jesus. He's the Sand Jesus. We'll call him Sand Jesus.
So yeah, I was midway through chapter 26X, couldn't get through it. I'm that close to the end of the game, and I just said, fuck it, let me start the game over. And I started over, Lynn's mode. I'm not sure if I started on hard mode or not. I don't feel like the difficulty was any harder. And I had a much easier time. I ended up actually, Lynn has both the Sulcati and the Manicotti. Hector still has his Wolfbeal along with the whatever it was called, Armadus or whatever.
Armads.
Yeah, there you go.
Yep.
So
Are you mad, bro?
I actually ran into the issue of a bloated inventory this time, of having almost too much, and that's a good problem to have in Fire Emblem. So
I always run into that issue because I spam the arena and I buy way too much shit.
Yeah. Also, always deploy Merlinus, because otherwise, if you pick up an item and your inventory's full, and I have a lot of characters who I just keep full inventories on for this reason, actually, depending on it, then, that item will actually be sent to Merlinus, which is usually much more useful than giving it to whatever random character visited this village, or whatever character defeated this enemy that had this weapon, who is actually the character that's strong against that type of enemy, and therefore wouldn't probably use that type of weapon.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
So I always deploy Merlinus. Plus, if he gets to level 20, he can move around like he can in the Binding Blade.
Yep, and
doesn't use a recruitment slot.
No, he does not use a recruitment slot, and that's so stupid that he does in that game. I hate it so much. I hate it so much. Out of curiosity, what's your favorite weapon in the game? Like, overall. Like, from any character, it can be specific, or it can be, like, from a type of weapon class. What are you thinking?
I like magic quite a bit. I'm a huge fan of magic.
Oh, dude, same.
In general, so I tend to go after my mage classes. In fact, it was pretty much standard for me to recruit or to deploy, all three mage types in every battle, unless, I could find and see that, okay, there are no dark magic users, so there's no reason to employ, to deploy Lucius in this chapter. But that actually was kind of my Achilles heel in this game. Was I always wanted to deploy all my lords. I always wanted to deploy all my magic users. You have to deploy a healer. I mean, you gotta. And so then it's like, what do you have left? You got to pick. Do I want some cavalry? Do I want some knights? But anyway, back to what you were asking. I mean, I guess I would have to say that the in-level shit that you get whenever you get to play as Athos is pretty fucking cool. Those magic spells are badass.
Oh, dude, Four Blaze and Aureola, I think
Yes.
that's the names of them. Yeah, Athos is really cool.
My Aureola.
little areolas. The nipple spell. No,
I don't know if you saw it. I lifted up my shirt and I did.
Well, I like Athos too. He's a level 20 arch sage that's basically guiding Lynn, Eliwood, and Hector to, the defeating of the dragons at the end of the game. But we'll get into that later. But his character is so awesome. I love his animation because he just holds up the little staff close to his face with the little sparkling animation. Then he lifts it up like Jesus Christ and just does his attack animation. Have you ever gotten a critical hit with him?
Yes.
He looks at the camera and does the same. He looks at the player and he's like, ting, and then he does his little animation.
Oh man, he is a god. He can use all 3 types of magic, so you technically don't even have to deploy any magic users in that chapter, but I did anyway.
I mean, okay, if you have Nino as a sage, bro, she's a god. She's ridiculous.
Yeah, I promoted Nino. So Nino is your character archetype that joins in the game very late, very low level. It's very difficult to train her up, but if you do, she ends up being, one of the best magic users in the game. It's just a question of whether or not it's worth it whenever you have characters like Pint, who
Pint is garbage.
He's a pre-promoted character that has A rank magic and staves. I mean,
I know, but I just don't like his ability to. Okay, we'll get into that stuff later. I just, bruh. Okay, I don't like pre-promoted characters. We'll talk about that later. I just don't.
What is your favorite weapon?
Oh, if I'm using a sword master, it is the Wado.
The Wodao or whatever.
The Wodao. I love that weapon
Wodao.
a lot. That's a different game entirely, but it's still GBA Fire Emblem animation. But my favorite weapon in the game is probably either Fimbulvetter, which is ice magic, which creates like a little ice tornado and shards out from within the enemy player, or Purge. Purge or I love magic. I love magic a lot. So Purge
bolting
or
bolting is so useful. Yes.
Bolting is dope, but it breaks even if you miss.
Yeah, and I hate that I used it up right away. I gave Pit bolting and I used it up in this last playthrough. I used it up in the very next chapter after you get it, because it was just useful. That chapter is very difficult. That's the one where you have to recruit Nino and you have to stop Jafar from dying, and he dies very easily once his killing edge breaks, or once what's her face gets up and bolts him. So
Priscilla.
You have to Priscilla. You have to no, Priscilla is the troubadour,
or is it Ursula?
Ursula, that's it.
Ursula, yeah. She's tough, too. She's really tough.
Yeah, and she's on a horseback. Is she also a troubadour, or is that
She's a Valkyrie. She's a Valkyrie.
Or a Valkyrie, obviously, yeah, because troubadours don't use anima magic.
Yeah, she's like, I don't know if you've played the Sacred Stones, you really need to, but one of the best characters that you fight going down Ephraim's path after Chapter 8 is Selena Flowerspar. She's a Valkyrie.
So I do have Sacred Stones. In fact, and I have played a little bit of it, but I don't think I've played that far into it. Actually, yeah, we can kind of take this opportunity to kind of talk about the Fire Emblem series as a whole too, because this is the first Fire Emblem game we're doing, and we'll do a lot of the other ones. I mean, this is one we could easily do a Fire Emblem game per season. But I actually took advantage of this, and Blazing Blade was the first game I played, because it's the one we're doing the podcast. But while I was in the middle of that playthrough, I went ahead and purchased most of the other games of the franchise. I got Sacred Stones, which is the GBA game that takes place after this. Well, not takes place, it's in a completely separate world, but it came out afterwards. See, Fire Emblem's kind of like Final Fantasy, where some of the games are connected, but some of them take place in completely different worlds. So I got Shadow Dragon on the DS. That was a remake of Shadow Dragon and the Blade of Light, the very first Fire Emblem game. I got Echoes Shadows of Valentia, which is a remake of the second game, Fire Emblem Gaiden, and I really like Shadows of Valentia, actually. I was really a fan of it. I got Three Houses, which is the very newest game. I know you're not as big of a fan of that one, but I played all the way through the story, or at least on one of the routes, and I'm having trouble deciding if it's my favorite Fire Emblem game or not, but I really, really liked it. Let me see what else. I purchased one of or two of the. I purchased all three Fates games, but I didn't realize that you have to purchase the base game. If you purchase the add-on version of a game, it doesn't work. So I kind of fucked up. So I haven't played that one yet, and I don't have Awakening yet either.
Well, to be honest, I when it comes to Fire Emblem, I love the Game Boy versions. Those are my favorites. They always will be. I'm not a fan of Three Houses, or I don't like Path of Radiance or Radiant Dawn, just because I don't like voice acting and I don't like the battle animations. I've never enjoyed the pacing of the battle animations.
I played Path of Radiance on an emulator. And also Binding Blade as well, because the Tellius Fire Emblem games, Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn, are almost impossible to get now. They cost upwards of $100 for each one.
Yep, you have to emulate it. Thank God for Dolphin.
Yeah, no kidding. That's the one I'm using. Okay, so you're not a fan of those ones, but so mainly you like the GBA Fire Emblem games.
Yep, those are classic to me.
And that's part of me also wants to say that Blazing Blade is my favorite Fire Emblem game, because it is very much a GBA Fire Emblem game. I think that it's a good starting point for the franchise, as I explained earlier, because it doesn't have a dummy casual mode. You just have to get good. But the game actually takes time and gives you, I think during Lynn's segment, characters don't actually die. They're just unusable. And there are also other characters such as, I think if any Lord dies, it automatically ends the chapter. But there are some characters that, because they show up, like Marcus, because they show up in the Binding Blade, they have to survive the Blazing Blade.
Yeah, plus they look much younger in the Blazing Blade. It's really cool how they kind of made their sprites look younger. Marcus is old as hell in Sealed Sword. And it's hilarious.
Yeah, Marcus is actually... What's funny is Marcus is a pre-promoted unit you get very early on that's actually very useful. It'll be more worth it to train up one of your cavalry units like Kent or Sane and make them into a paladin. But up until the point where you have a paladin, Marcus is very useful to have because he's a powerful character. He's a better paladin than Isadora.
Oh, dude, everyone's a better paladin than Isadora.
And she's Eliwood's sister, so I kind of wanted to use her a little bit. And I also used her to recruit Harkin because I felt like that's the way you should do it. But I think you can recruit her with the Lords too.
I mean, yeah. But also, do you like Harkin as a character?
As a pre-promoted unit, he's useful. Like if you don't have a hero on your team, which I didn't because I didn't invest in Raven, then Harkin is actually a powerhouse.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of Raven, to be honest.
I've heard a lot of good things about him, that he's one of the best early infantry units, but there are some units that kind of make him obsolete later on in the game. There are a lot of characters like that in this game.
I'll be honest, I played the first Fire Emblem game I ever played was Sacred Stones. That's the first one I ever played. And so in the Sacred Stones, when you promote units, you can actually choose what class to promote them to. So if you're promoting a fighter, you can choose between a warrior or a hero. And depending on the run-through I played, I would pick one or the other. But when I played Blazing Blade, you can't pick. Your units are automatically promoted into whatever their next class is. And it took me a while to get used to that, but that also made me think about which units I wanted to use more so. I've never really been the biggest fan of Paladins, so I didn't use Cavaliers that much. But honestly, when you're dealing with a lot of ground infantry, like soldiers or archers, they're good to have. It just depends on how you play, really.
And I would use the augury a lot of times to determine what units were going to be best on which maps. I would definitely take that into account. And it would also allow me to kind of use some units that I hadn't given enough love to, which was useful. And also, aside from the augury, you can also use the check map function. Now, it won't show you enemies that later come in as reinforcements, but it will show you the initial enemies on the map, which is useful because then you'll know, okay, which types of mages or magic type characters should I deploy in this chapter, so I can take advantage of those weaknesses. Should I employ a lot of sword users in this map, or a lot of axe users, or a lot of lance users?
Yep, you're absolutely right. And I've never really used the augury. I've just kind of went balls to the wall and jumped into the chapter. But I think that at this point, that's because I've played through them so many times. I hope for the best, and if I lose somebody, I restart it. I love the stories of these games, and we'll get into that in part 2, obviously. But that's why I play these games. Every now and then I'll be like, you know what, I really want to go back through. But I also love the gameplay. I love the animations of the sprites as they're fighting. I love the weapon triangles. I love the interactions between the characters. I love the support conversations. That's one of my favorite aspects of this game, is the support conversations. I love how you can take units and have them grow closer to other units on the map. I mean, that's how it would be in real life. If you're out constantly traveling with people, or in a group fighting alongside people, you're going to get close to those people. And I like how they kind of give you a way to do that in this game. Like in the Sacred Stones, there's a character called well, actually, no, we won't talk about the Sacred Stones because that's a different game. You can actually take Lynn, for example, and you can talk to Eliwood or Hector, and their relationships can grow. Basically, Hector and Eliwood are always talking about how they want to spar after everything is over, and I really like that. Or Lynn is talking to Hector, and Hector's like, yeah, I don't typically fight women because I'd beat your ass. And Lynn's like, oh yeah, you want to fucking bet? Let's do this. Let's go.
Yes.
And I think it's hilarious, and I think it's very tastefully done. So I'm happy about that.
100% agree. I love the support conversations. The only thing I don't like about them in this game is that they're limited, and that you can only have 5 support conversations per character, which means that if you want to get an A rank with somebody, that's going to take 3 of those away. And so you're only going to be able to have 1 A rank per character with another character. So that kind of sucks, and I wish that there just wasn't a limit. It just doesn't make sense that there should be a limit. If you put units together and you have enough time, you should be able to do it. And later games ended up adopting that and saying, if you have enough time to increase support between all of your units, do it. But at the same time, having a limited number of support conversations does allow you to make each playthrough more unique and to explore. It pushes you to only pursue specific types of support ranks, and not all characters are going to be compatible with each other, right? I think some characters, like, they're not going to have any sort of a conversation, if I'm not mistaken.
No, not at all.
But there are, and so some of them are more obvious and make sense. Like your main 3 lords, they make sense. Hector and Eliwood grew up together; they're best friends. It makes sense why they would have a support conversation, or the Pegasus sisters or whatnot. But what's really fun is taking units that you wouldn't think have any kind of support conversation, and you find out that they do.
Yep, absolutely, and that's part of the magic of these games, is that it takes tiny little sprites and it kind of brings them to life and gives them character, gives them focus. And you're right, it does make each run through unique.
And it's how you actually get the most out of the story. You're only going to get certain character backstories or lore by having those support conversations. And they're easy to miss. There's no obvious indicator other than whenever you move next to the unit, the first option it'll say will be support. Later games kind of highlight it a little bit better, which is nice. But yeah, in this game you kind of just have to try it. And I don't think there was any part of the tutorial that really goes into depth about that. No, they do tell you that you can talk to other units about it. They briefly go over it, but it doesn't expansively go over it. And that's one thing I missed in my first playthrough was as well. And why I learned that it's best to just stick your units together, and you might be surprised by who ends up having a support conversation, based on just being next to each other a lot.
Yeah, because you can literally have units talk to each other and want to get married.
Yeah, and that's the big thing with Fire Emblem. That's a series staple, is that characters that get A rank, or in some cases S rank conversations with other characters, those are the ones that they end up with, and that changes that character's ending and who they end up with. So what's really interesting is that you get to decide who Roy's mother is in this game. It can be Ninian, it can be, I think, Floria, if I'm not mistaken. It can be Ninian. Did I say Ninian already?
You said Ninian twice.
It can be Lindis, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The only sad thing is that means that whichever character it is, they end up dying. So
Yep.
it's just kind of sad.
Oh, dude. Fire Emblem has no chill when it comes to being sad.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, they do not hold back with making you cry. And honestly, we will get into more of that, sad shit when part 2 swings around,
Yeah. Well, anything else that you wanted to add about Fire Emblem as far as the topics we've discussed thus far?
I mean, we've pretty much hit everything as far as gameplay is concerned. Really, the only thing to do now is to kind of dive into the story, and there's a lot to cover. So, honestly, for right now, I think we're just going to have to leave everybody in suspense. Dun, dun, dun.
All right. Well, yep, we're sitting at about 50 minutes here, so we're doing pretty well, and we've still got a lot more to talk about when it comes to Fire Emblem. By the time of part 2, I'm going to try to at least finish my Eliwood run, if not finish an additional Hector run as well, because after you complete the game one time, you get to play, the entirety of Eliwood's segment as Hector instead, which is interesting because not only is it a little bit harder, but it also introduces additional characters that you can recruit, and there are some extra chapters as well. So I'm actually really excited to get into that, and I've heard that the hardest challenge that this game has to offer is Hector Hard Mode.
Oh, yeah. Good stuff.
Yeah, so that's going to be fun. But guys, if you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or feedback on your platform of choice. You can find Collateral Gaming wherever you get your podcasts. We are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, YouTube, you name it. You can also check us out on social media. What did you just send me? Is that Obi-Wan and Anakin?
Yes, I did. Because he cuts off.
Nice.
Sorry, everybody.
Another happy landing.
Hello there.
Oh my god. Okay, no, we're not going to talk about that. You know where I'm going with this thing.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah. And also check us out on social media. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We are also on Patreon. If you donate any amount of money, you get access to our exclusive full-length commentaries. I believe we have one patron already by the name of Robert. So thank you, Robert, for being our patron. And during the inter-season break, we are going to definitely be releasing some more commentaries. I would love to do a Let's Play on a Fire Emblem game. I'm open to suggestions on which one.
Oh, dude, you and I can tackle that for sure.
Yeah, that would be a hell of a lot of fun. Although it might be better if it's a game that, like we play through, or I mean, you've played it, but like I play through at least once so that I know what the hell I'm doing. But yeah, no, I'm excited about that. So stick around for part 2 of our season finale. By the way, guys, I didn't announce that on this episode, but this is our season finale. We'll take some time in part 2 to also kind of talk about the season as a whole, which is going to be fun. But yeah, it's been a great season. We've had a lot of fun games, and we are already planning season 5 of Collateral Gaming. So stick around for that. Also this month, I would like to have a bonus round, and I think that we're due for another game recommendations episode. We haven't done one this season.
Oh yeah, dude, we'll definitely have to figure that out, and also it's good to be back. I've missed this podcast. It's good to be back on it, and just in time for season 5.
Season 5. Well, that being said, guys, stick around, and we'll see you in part 2. I've been Ashley Chancellor.
I have been Zachary Gio.
And we are Collateral Gaming. We are out.
Bye!
Motherfuckers. Collateral Gaming is a Collateral Media podcast. All music and game clips are owned by the respective creators and are used for educational purposes only. Please don't sue us. We're poor.